What's going on, guys? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. Aaron Keller made a dev blog recapping all the changes that are coming to Lifeweaver, and Alec Dawson did a Q&A live stream where he went into more depth on the new character as well as many other changes that are currently or in development to the rest of the cast. As we've previously reported, there's a big rework coming to Lifeweaver this Tuesday, but also a series of buffs to make him a bit more effective and fluid. In the blog post, Aaron Keller details this further, but also drops some tidbits of interesting information. There was a surprising bit of data that his win rate is much higher for low-skill players than it is for high-skill players. In the Q&A live stream, Alec Dawson expanded on this point and explained for the first couple days of Lifeweaver's launch, the deaths of not just him, but all characters in the game went down because Lifeweaver, in a mirror especially, adds little offense to almost none from the support position, a whole lot of survivability for himself and his team. And you can imagine, especially with so many skill shot healers on the roster, that especially for the average player, an auto lock on heal that gives a burst of health is going to be more efficient than skill shot healing. So far, the drop off has been at higher tiers of play, where there's more aim skill, coordination, and vertical mobility, I'd say, to get on top of Lifeweaver. That's also a reason why they're removing his passive. Parting Gift is removed because it was sort of a snowball effect for an enemy flanker to finish off Lifeweaver and then get a mini health pack for doing so. While yes, there's a bigger healing bonus for his team, if you did die, that means an enemy's in the vicinity and they might be winning the fight. So more times than not, it was a bigger advantage to the enemy team than your team. Alec Dawson said that they have no plans for making a new passive at this time. However, that's something that they can now leave the door open to way down the line in the future if they feel they need to. But for now, they're simplifying his kit to be good at just a few things and not have so much going on, because he's already a complex hero, as Aaron Keller says in the blog post. In Overwatch 1, when they had a hero this complicated, such as Genji and Hanzo, they split them into two characters. They used to be just one Shimada. Aaron Keller adds, while we won't make every Overwatch hero this complex, we think there's room to make more heroes like Lifeweaver in the future. In regards to launching a hero a bit underpowered, such as Ramatra or Lifeweaver, who both received pretty quick buffs to get them into competitive viability, Aaron Keller says, regarding new hero balance, we're not exactly shifting our philosophy, but we think that both Lifeweaver and Ramatra landed a little softer than we would have liked. We recognize that a hero's win rate will climb after they launch, but we also want those same heroes to feel exciting for players on day one. Our goal is for new heroes to feel balanced at launch, not overpowered, but definitely not underpowered either. When we don't hit that mark, we'll make adjustments based on your feedback and the data we see. That's it for the dev blog. Let's go more into depth with the Q&A. Some surprising facts about Lifeweaver. His healing per 10 is second only to Mercy, who has the highest. But that's across all skill ranges. The reliability of a soft lock almost auto target makes up for a big gap in output in the metal ranks when you're going up against a support who is whiffing shots. On the subject of trolling your team with Life Grip, Alec Dawson says that it has gone better than they even anticipated. They thought it was going to cause some trouble. Because most heroes do have movement abilities, using one to break the grip is one option to escape. But an interesting answer they gave when discussing whether an accept or let's say like press interact to break the life grip, the reason they're not so keen on that idea is even as like an enemy player, when you see the enemy get life gripped away, you want to be able to know where they can end up and have some reliability with that. So it's almost like a balancing point that you have to spend a movement cooldown in order to break out of the grip, because there is some text that you could imagine where you can save a teammate, but then they utilize some of the momentum or start a movement path that's more unpredictable. I mean, that already can happen. You just have to spend a movement cooldown to do so. But if all you had to do was press interact to break it, well, then you would do that all the time. Keep in mind that in Overwatch, you have a lot of mid-air mobility and control. So I think they're trying to limit that based on what they're saying. When asked about Lifeweaver's hitbox, which is massive since he has such a large character model, but also the pedals that are winging out of him, similar to Mercy, are also fairly easy to hit. Alec Dawson says that hitbox changes take a lot of work, but it is something they're discussing. And again, we have to be careful with what terms they use. Sometimes they say thinking of, looking at, discussing. If they're discussing it, they're just like planning to plan or considering it as an option. It's not currently in development. I would imagine that they're looking to see the performance boost he gets with the series of buffs and rework before they do another pass to improve him. And especially when he says hitbox changes take a lot of work, that's like expensive when it comes to the budget of the team in terms of their time and energy put in. That's it on Lifeweaver. Remember, the rework and new patch of changes will come on Tuesday, April 25th. They move on to talking about general hero changes in the game as a whole. Brigitte's big rework caused PTSD among the player base and even former player base, who couldn't believe Blizzard would buff Brig in such a way, but numerically speaking, her win rate has leveled out to be at the same place. So it's more of a power shift than anything. However, in both versions, her win rate was quite high. Alec does say they are going to fix the bug where the additional armor health you get in Rally initially isn't acting as armor, it's just acting as normal health. So if you felt like you weren't as tanky as you expected to be in Rally, well, that's going to change significantly. Alec doesn't seem to think that it's going to make a huge difference, but I think the damage reduction of armor really does. I think to a character like Bastion, who just has a little bit of natural armor health, and with the high healing potential of some supports in the game, it can be very tough to break through. So Brig comboed with a little bit of help and having Inspire, I do think the tankiness is going to go up considerably. But Alec responds to a lot of the internet's sky is falling reaction to the rework of Brig in saying that the opportunities to land those big stuns aren't as there as you think. Like, there's not as many opportunities to just abuse the stun, and it's a shorter duration than it was in Overwatch 1 as well, even though it does multi-stun, which seems kind of crazy at first, but considering it's an ultimate, and as I said originally, I wasn't too sold on the changes being so different or this massive power spike. Overwatch 2 is a shooter game, and a lot of the characters are very adept at shooting from range. So playing any character that needs to close the distance, unless you're Ramatra and get multiple cycles of extra armor, you don't really do that without getting blasted from range by lots of things. Alec Dawson gets asked about Widowmaker, who tends to dominate top 500 gameplay, where on certain Widow maps, if your team doesn't have one, she just rolls your entire team. Alec seems pretty happy with the state of Widowmaker because she is just okay on other maps that aren't so favorable to her. And while they don't have any direct answer planned yet, one thing they might look at is instead adding more cover positions on some of the really long sight lines on some of the best sniper maps. I think that might just be a gameplay improvement in general, Widowmaker aside. The new cover they added to the maps in Overwatch 2 has been one of those very silent and unrecognized improvements to the game, in my opinion, and I hope to see more of it. When asked about the Moira rework, they explained in saying that she's not getting a rework like Sombra is getting a big rework. Sombra is going to be significantly different. I'll explain that in a moment. But with Moira, they have been playtesting different bits of utility for the character, but they don't want to go away from the simple and easy to understand kit that she currently has. Just add an extra tool somewhere. They playtested something last week and have even playtested the April Fool's patch where you could control the orb's stop speed to sort of place it where you want. He expanded on a previous point that he did in a dev chat, explaining that at one time they tried to give the orb the ability to give recon of the enemy, just to give it some ability. But they felt that it didn't really fit with the character fantasy of Moira, and these kinds of new mechanics that they're developing, they are putting to the side to maybe introduce on a new hero in the future and try to keep Moira in the lane that she's supposed to be in. When asked about Genji, who is the perpetual meme in Overwatch 2, whenever any balance change is considered or any problem arises, the internet cries, "I think they should nerf Genji again." That should solve everything. Alec Dawson isn't buying the hype though. He says that he doesn't think Genji's underpowered because his win rate is around 50%. In my opinion, that win rate requires a whole lot more razzle dazzle when there's so many other characters that are just more easy to play with less risk. However, something they may consider is the feeling of the character. Alec Dawson explains that balance isn't just about win rates, but sometimes the player feel or the reward factor of the character. So he may be receiving a buff eventually that is less aiming to just straight up buff his win rate because Alec thinks it's fine, but instead of the feeling and immersion you have when you're making the plays that you are making. When asked about Mercy, Rez, and Bluebeam, Alec says this is not something they're looking at because as they have shown with their recent changes, Guardian Angel has been their focus, trying to get it in line. But he does admit that they don't want to keep changing it over and over again, making it confusing for everybody. I certainly hope that's the case, and I think they've reached a pretty good middle point where she retains some of the interesting tanking she can do by healing herself while healing a teammate, but doesn't have the unstoppable movement, but then it's also not super easily punished either. It's like a big balance point between all of the things they've tried so far. I would bet they might have to look at her again when the new damage hero comes out in season whatever. There's a support and a tank, I think, before that. But if the new damage hero is like some new super pocketable DPS, then I think we might see the re-emergence of Mercy being an issue, or at least a topic of community concern. There was a recent bug fix, quote unquote, where Ashe was no longer able to gain ultimate charge while Bob is active. However, years ago, a different set of Overwatch team declared it a bug fix in the exact opposite direction, where they wanted her to gain ult during Bob being out. Now they reverted it, calling it a bug each time. That's a bit confusing. As Alec Dawson explains, that was a miscommunication, as you might imagine, but does add that they are looking how heroes build ult while their ults are deployed in general, because there's characters like Wrecking Ball who can put down Minefield, and although Minefield itself won't damage and then give you ult for that, your other attacks will build you another Minefield while Minefield is active, which makes these deployment style ults kind of interesting because you're gaining an advantage while they're out, and if you also can gain your next ult, you can see how that can tend to snowball an advantage. When asked about Junkerqueen, Alex said she is a bit underrated because her win rates are above Roadhog and Orisa, but she is a character that's on the list to be looked at. They don't want to just empower the shout like they did in beta, so they're going to look to buff other aspects of her kit to make her more viable. We know Roadhog is getting a rework. That's one that's been in development. But an interesting additional comment Alec gave was that they do want to keep some of that solo or selfish play to the character. So that's a bit interesting because they deliberately took that away when they stopped his ability to easily one-shot. Maybe it'll be something like the Brig rework, where they gave her stun back during her ultimate. Maybe Hog will, in a similar way, during his rework, will get some stuff to help the team, but also have something for him to make a very specific solo carry play. Mei is a character who lost some of her crowd control due to the Overwatch 1 to 2 rework, but they are going to re-add to the game the little mini game of building up your freeze on a target. You're not going to gain the full ice cube freeze of CCing your opponent completely, but it sounds like you're going to gain some ramp up effects in order to emulate that play opportunity that you had in Overwatch 1, to be able to gain a full freeze, then line up a headshot. The Sombra rework is a ways away, Alec Dawson says, but they're currently putting the finishing touches on the design, which is like the start of them to actually work on it. He explains that Sombra is going to be more lethal with less escapability, explaining that it's going to change how you interact with a lot of things. All right, I'm just going to take a guess, okay? Because they keep taking ideas from MOBA games, and I have guessed some of these ability reworks, like I guess the Brig regaining her stun, which sounds to like break the entire concept of what Overwatch 2 is about, but I guessed that one. So let's see if I can guess this Sombra rework. My guess is that she gets a backstab mechanic. Riki in Dota 2 is also a stealth flanker style hero and does extra damage when hitting an enemy in the back. So if they're aware and turn around to fight you, you won't do as much, but if you use your mobility to get behind them, you do extra damage. That's my guess. Let me know yours in the comment section down below. When asked about role passives, Alec Dawson says they're not going to look at them currently, but it's something they'll consider on like a yearly basis. Well, yes, it's true that a character like Hanzo gains no benefit from the reload boost after elimination for the DPS passive. He does think that the other two roles passives are working quite well. And as a Grandmaster support player myself, I have to say that I really like taking advantage of the self-heal. It makes Overwatch 2 so much more playable with the lack of tanks on the battlefield. And you can say what you want about the support's power level right now. Even me, I'll admit, I think supports are overpowered, but to some degree, the ability-based kit, or the kit that has all of the interaction abilities for the team, you would think would be overpowered when it's used correctly. So unless they're just like frail, do-nothing characters that easily get run over, they're going to be overpowered. And that probably is like the major narrative change from the launch of Overwatch 2 to now. where not only have they reworked a lot of the characters to buff the supports, similar to the way they buffed the tanks from Overwatch 1 to 2, they keep adding new ones to really flesh out the roster to give you even more options. One last question for the video. What do you think they should try next for the role passives come the next year of Overwatch 2? It would be a way that they can freshen up the gameplay and change it all over again just by tuning one balance knob. Let me know what you would like to see for any of the 3 roles, if not all of them, in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave the video with a like, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.